And good evening, Commanders, and welcome to the ultimate original Elite Dangerous Lore Tour 2020. So I hope you have enjoyed the ride. We are now in the last episode of the original tour. So it's been quite a ride since the beginning of April. Covered a lot of ground, covered a lot of history, covered a lot of space. So anyway, I hope you've been enjoying it. It is all available, obviously on YouTube if you wish to watch it after the event. You don't manage to catch it live, but thank you very much for all of you who are here. It's fantastic to have the company in game, and it's been really interesting for me. I've learned some stuff that I didn't know about the lore as well in the process of researching stuff. So it's been good. It's been good. Now we are here tonight. Only just, in fact, I've managed to log on. And I don't, the server seems to be a little bit unsteady at the moment. I can see some commanders in front of me, so at least that bit's working. But it took me about 3 or 4 times to log in, so I'm just hoping that the servers stay with us. So all power to the Frontier servers to make sure it stays up this evening. Everything's as stable as possible. Does seem to be having some problems. So first off, where are we? We are in the Haoria system. Which is, let me just get the spelling for you. It is Haoria. I'll type it in the chat. That's probably easier, isn't it? So Haoria. That's where we are this evening, and we're going to be talking about a woman who I created. Probably doesn't need a great deal of introduction for many of you because you will have heard her name multiple times throughout the lore of Elite Dangerous, but some of you may not know this story, and I thought it was important to include her towards the end. It's kind of a final send-off for the Elite Dangerous lore tour. Now, before any of you get too upset, we are continuing on with a bit of an expedition after this for a few weeks. We are going to go and visit in fact, the first ever megaship in Elite Dangerous as part of the extended tour. We're going to make a little bit of some sort of a pilgrimage, sort of an expedition out into the Formidine Rift, more of which we will be talking about as well. So all this will become clear. So for those of you who've kind of enjoyed the tour, there is a bit more to come, but I do need a bit of time off to find some more lore to talk about. So there probably will be a new tour next year at some point, but we're going to continue on with the stream on Thursdays anyway, certainly for the time being, and we'll find other bits and pieces to do in it. There are some other ideas bubbling away as well, so there's stuff to come. So don't feel that I'm just going to switch off after tonight and that's it, that's your lot. I will be doing some more stuff, and we'll get to chatter away on Elite and do some cool things. So anyway, so we are in the Haoria system now. Why, you may be asking, why are we in the Haoria system? So I will explain all. We're not very far away from where we're going to end up, but there's a little bit of a super cruise to do. We'll try and do that as much together as we can. Now, why are we in the Haoria system? He says, just switching to full screen focus. You can see what I can see. So here I am. There's a few commanders hanging around in space. Now, apologies for the location, really, because this system is a bit minimalist, isn't it? If you look at the system map, there isn't a great deal here, although there are. When I logged on yesterday, there wasn't anything here at all. Now there are 5 fleet carriers. Which is quite cool. So does it identify them? The Red Dwarf, nice name. So I'm going to go through these. The Red Dwarf, Wimbledon Common, the Indestructible, fair enough. The IFC Vermicious Canid. Oh, hang on, where's the Vermicious Canids from? That's Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, so had full marks for the literary connection there. And, the Rat's Nest. The Fuel Rats are here. Fantastic. Well, welcome, guys. Lovely to see you, all these fleet carriers in the Haoria system, which is there's probably never been anything ever happening in the Haoria system ever before. So you may be wondering, why are we here? Why am I starting the Haoria system? Okay, there's a very, very good reason in the lore for this, and that is, this is the birthplace. This is the birthplace of our late heroine tonight. Lady, or Senator, should I say, Kahina Tijani Loren. Actually, although she lost her senatorship, which we'll talk about as well. So Lady Kahina, I can't even say it. Lady Kahina Tijani Loren was born in this system. Now you may say, well, who's Lady Kahina? Well, you will probably know her better as Salomé. And Salomé, and the story of Salomé, is what we're going to be talking about this evening. Now, let's recap a little bit, because this is the last of the official kind of lore tour events. So let's just quickly catch up with where we are for the benefit of anybody who's missed anything. Right, we started with Earth, okay? The United States won. Formed the Federation. Federation spread out to planets. There were lots of wars and lots of stuff that went wrong. The Empire broke away. The Empire formed. Lots and lots of expansion. Generation ships were sent out. Hyperspace was invented. We encountered the Thargoids. We encountered the Guardians. And we spread out and out and out and out through space. Very, very recently, things like the frameshift drive and things like that were invented. We discovered that there'd been all sorts of skullduggery around INRA and what humanity did to the Thargoids. Seemed like maybe we were the aggressors rather than the Thargoids to us. And we discovered that the Thargoids had a fight with the Guardians, and the Guardians went extinct several million years ago. And that almost brings us up to the present day. Okay. We also seen how the previous games fitted into that slot, with the original game being in the year 3125. The second game being the year 3200, the third game being the year 3250, and then Elite Dangerous obviously starts in the year 3300. Now, we have to go back a little bit before that time to pick up the story of Salomé. She is born in the year 3275. Okay, so at the point at which Elite Dangerous starts, she is 25. She's a young woman of a young age, and she is born in the Heoria system. This is at least it was supposed to be. I think it still is. Let's check. It's supposed to be where's the description? I need to click on it, didn't I? Why can't I see the description? It's because there's too many friends here. Where's the actual... Oh, I can never remember how to do this. Heoria, it's on the... Oh, well, never mind. It's supposed to be an imperial system. Okay, this is the home of the Loren family. System map. Ah, I was in the wrong place. I can never remember. Oh, that's where it appears, of course. Duh. Right, okay, so it's exploited by Dentron Patrius. Controlling faction is currently the Allied Dependent Force, but it is allegiance to the Empire, which is kind of correct. Okay, there we go. So that's basically where we are. So that's okay. There shouldn't be much else about it, to be honest. As long as it's Empire, that's correct. Now, what that means is this is where the Lorens were family existed. Okay, now the Lorens were a powerful imperial family. Kahina is the daughter of Senator Algreb Loren, a very powerful man, owns the entire Heoria star system, very rich, very powerful, and he has massive plans on expanding his influence to other star systems, as all Imperials kind of like to do. Okay, senators generally don't rise to being senators unless they have control of a star system. That's kind of one of the marks of being a senator in the Elite Dangerous universe, and that basically is, he's got a Heoria system, but he sees an opportunity. Okay, he sees an opportunity. Now, in the years between 3275 and 3300, which is when Elite Dangerous starts, okay, the frameshift drive is developed. We're not quite sure where it came from. Maybe it was reverse engineered Thargoid tech. Maybe it was something from Alliance. Maybe it was something from Galcop that was kind of reinvented. We don't really know. Okay, but suddenly, just a few years before the year 3300, the frameshift drive is invented, which is kind of convenient, right, for Elite Dangerous, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to fly around like we do. But the frameshift drive is a relatively new piece of technology. Okay, it's come just before the date that the game starts in 3300. Now, when that was invented, in about 3290, okay, so like, let's say 10 years before Elite Dangerous starts, frameshift drive is a brand new piece of kit. All the ships in the galaxy before that point don't have the frameshift drive. They have the old hyperspace drives, which take ages to get anywhere. Okay, so the frameshift drive is a massive revolution in technology, but it needs something. Okay, it needs a metal chemical called tantalum. Okay, Now, tantalum is a relatively rare, it's not really precious metal, but it's rare enough to be something that needs to be going mined. So we talked recently about diamond gold rushes and all the other gold rushes and stuff. Well, in the lore there is a tantalum gold rush in the years preceding Elite Dangerous, because every single ship in the galaxy needs to be refitted with the FSD, and what that means is everybody needs tantalum, because tantalum is a vital, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason is, but it's a vital component for the frameshift drive. We need to have lots of tantalum. So there's a sudden gold rush, okay? And any system, surprise, that has tantalum in it is therefore a target for a gold rush. And it turns out that not far away from Haoria is a system rich in tantalum, and it's known as the Prism system. And there it is. Somebody's already waiting there, as we can see. It's not very far away. We'll be able to make it in one jump. The Prism system is an interesting place, okay? Now, it says here in the description, oops, which just then disappeared, Keone, which is one of the moons in the system, it's a habitable moon, was a pleasant pastoral moon until the Prism system was seized by the Loren lineage, an imperial family distantly related to the ruling Duval, isn't he? So the Lorens have got connections to the Duvals, who we've all talked about, the Duval imperial line. And it was invaded in the year 3297, so 3 years before Elite Dangerous starts. Prism was invaded by the Imperials. The system remains unstable at this time, and traders are advised to proceed with caution. Now, what actually happened was that there were some settlers on the Prism system, but they were kind of unofficial. Settlers. So the Imperials, Algreb Loren and his family, basically went in and firebombed the planet. Firebombed the moon, should I say. Firebombed the Keone moon and wiped out all the original settlers. And they managed to get away with this because they had a mining claim to the system under Imperial law that had never been actioned. And they had submitted some very, very cleverly worded objections to the Federation, saying, by the way, we do intend to exploit our mining rights, but they buried it in all sorts of other formal, boring requests, and the Federation had missed it in the paperwork. So when the Imperials went in, attacked the moon, wiped out all the settlers, the Federation was, understandably, completely outraged at the death of all their citizens. At which point the Imperials simply turned around and said, well, we sent you various bits of paperwork asking you to remove your colonists, but you didn't answer. So basically, it's your fault. And the Federation legally didn't have a leg to stand on. So tensions grew around the system for that reason. But so the Imperials were extremely underhand and immoral, but legally entitled to do what they did. So the Prism system was invaded. The Prism system was taken over by the Imperials. They do what Imperials do. They built some very, very nice palaces and views, and the Keone moon is a nice place. It's a nice place to hang out. And that was where the Loren family moved. Now, the Loren family had Algreb Loren, who's the big senator. He's now got this. He's now building he gets Mestopoulos mining in to build a great big mining corporation ship to exploit the Prism system. That is still there. It's called Hiram's Anchorage. And it's basically a great big mining platform to take the tantalum, refine it, and then ship it back out and make a lot of money, which is basically his aim. And have the rights to the tantalum. Now he has 3 daughters, and the third and least favourable one is a lady by the name of Kahina Tijani Loren, his third daughter. She is not very nice, to be honest. She is quite unpleasant. She doesn't get on with her father at all. She's very rebellious. But she has been trained in all sorts of things, as Imperials often are, things like hand-to-hand combat and bits and pieces like that. So she is a very capable but very unpleasant young woman. She doesn't like her father, and she knows, because she's quite smart, the only reason that he has had any children at all is to basically foist them on other people and cement allegiances by marriage. So that is his plan. He has 3 daughters. He intends to use them to marry them off to make political allegiances and make them very advantageous to him. That's basically his thing. So his plan is to marry all his daughters off and do that sort of stuff. So it's all going fine. Okay, it's all going fine. Other than when they bombed the planet and took it over, they didn't get everyone. And seeds of discontent start to rumble. So we're going to now move into the Prism system, because it's going to take us a little while to get there, okay? And although it's only one jump, the flight in from the star is quite a long way. Now, oddly enough, it's a bit of a faff now, but it is by design, and I'll explain a little bit why that is when we get there. So if you'd like to join with me, launching from here, for those of you who are in my wing, thank you very much. I'm going to launch up. Just be careful, because I can't see anybody above me. Woo! Make sure you reset your HOTAS before you take off. I'm not getting any better at flying, as you can see. Right, so there we go. There's loads of people in the instance, which is fantastic. So that's kind of good. Right, so around we go. Prism system should be over there, I'm hoping. There it is. I can hear a little bit of echo from my wing. I'm just going to disable my local voice comms. There we go. Right, so head towards Prism, engage hyperspace. Oh, landing gear. There we go. All ships engage to the Prism system. Let's go. Gonna get that cool jumping effect. Now the Prism system is so named because it contains a star of every primary colour that you can have with stars. I designed it deliberately because I wanted it to be kind of an interesting place to be there. And here we go. We jump out into a massively bright star, and they're all named after precious gems. So this is a system I'm rather proud of, because I designed this system. Okay, I designed this system as part of the Kickstarter reward for penning a book. The disadvantage for players in the system is you obviously jump out near the primary centre of mass of the Prism system, which is the sapphire star. If you look at the system map, you'll see all the other stars are named after precious gems. So you've got diamond, ruby, and Prism itself. Although that star does have a different name in my book, in case you've wondered. But it's only this star here that actually has any kind of civilization around it. The rest of it is kind of uninhabited. Keone is where we need to head, and we need to head to Hiram's anchorage. And there's already some. I can see some. Whoa, being interdicted. In fact, I'm going to fight the interdiction. Bastard NPCs mucking up my stream. Can you believe it? That's just unsociable. In my own system, I get interdicted by an NPC. Right, fight the interdiction live on screen. There we go. Come on. Yes, see? No messing about with me. Right, I'll do that again. We are heading for Hiram's anchorage. So set your course to Hiram's anchorage. That's where we're heading. It'll take you a little while to get there, I'm afraid, because this is a big system. So I'm just going to lock that on while I talk about some other bits and pieces, and hope I don't get interdicted again. That's a bit annoying, but there we go. I can put that onto Super Cruise Assist, so that's good. There we go. Right, fantastic. Okay, so we're there. Don't they know who I am exactly? I can't believe I get interdicted in my own system. That's outrageous. So there we go. So Hiram's language is a little bit of a long way away, so it'll take a little bit of time to get there. But that's good. We've got quite a lot of ground to cover in the meantime. So while I'm doing that, I want to, at this point, bring in a trailer that I created about this exact scenario. Okay, so it's old. This is from 2013. Some of you probably won't have seen this. Some of you may remember it. Apologies, it's slightly self-promoted because it's talking about my book, but I can't really do this bit of the law tour without talking about my books because it's kind of the same thing. So while we're flying in, I'm going to show you this trailer, which sets the scene for the story to come. So that was the trailer. That was the intro to my book. So basically, the story I came up with, because this was all part of the Kickstarter reward. So back before Elite Dangerous was a thing. Okay, this was back in end of 2012. The Elite Dangerous Kickstarter came. One of the pledge rewards was you can write yourself an official story in the Elite Dangerous universe if you give us $4.5 grand. Now, long story short, I didn't have $4.5 grand. I ran my own Kickstarter to raise $4.5 grand so I could put that money on the Elite Dangerous Kickstarter to buy the pledge that allowed me to write the book. It got very, very complicated, but it worked. Then I was writing an official book in the Elite Dangerous universe. So I came up with this story, okay? So I wanted to do a political shenanigans type story between the Empire and the Federation and exactly a Kickstarterception. That's exactly what it was. And I wanted to do all those sort of things and have space politics. It was kind of Game of Thrones in space was what I was aiming for in my head as an initial concept. And so I started off with building characters, and the main character, of course, is Lady Kahina Tijani Loren, and she has a backstory of not being very nice. And if you read Elite Reclamation, you'll understand her character. She's not very nice. She's acerbic. She's quite witty, but she's clever. She's underhanded. She's not very likable. And she was deliberately made not very likable because, you know, I didn't want her to be a goody-goody heroine, basically. I didn't want her to be the space princess that everybody kind of, oh, she's just lovely, you're just going to follow the space princess. I don't want, you know, didn't want Kahina to be like that. So she was unlikable, she was nasty. And going back to where the lore sort of picks up, with her father trying to marry his daughters off to gain political advantage, Kahina sees this coming. Okay, she sees that she's going to be married off to somebody she can't stand to cement a political alliance, and she sabotages it and gets her eldest sister to get married in her place by deliberately making herself unappealing to the poor husband-to-be. And so she's clever, and she manages to outwit and get her older sister into trouble, which, of course, you know, the relationships in the family are not great. They break down even further. So Kahina avoids that fate. But during the wedding, and I always feel a little bit guilty about this because it looks like, and lots of people have accused me of it, you know, the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. Well, I genuinely hadn't seen that or read it before I penned that particular chapter in my book. But what happens basically is the few survivors of the bombing of the moon, band together. You know, they call themselves the Reclamists, and they basically have this plan to take over and rid the world of the Loren family. And they effectively gate crash the wedding as musicians, and rather than bringing out musical instruments, they bring out guns, and they basically slaughter everybody in the wedding. Kahina narrowly escapes getting shot, manages to pull her sister, one of her sisters, out before she's killed, runs upstairs in their palace, but is cornered and is stabbed to death by her a man she thought she could trust, her mentor. And after 2 chapters, it appears the story is over because Kahina dies. Okay, Kahina dies. Then things start getting weird. Okay, so Kahina is apparently dead. Her body is taken off Prism in an Imperial ship and heads into deep space. And unbeknownst to anybody left on the Keone moon, where the revolution is now happening, full throttle. Sorry, I'm in Super Cruise Assist, so I can't do anything. I should really throttle up. Yeah, okay. How long is it going to take me? I'm getting there, to be honest. I'm going to leave it in Super Cruise because then I can keep my hands off and talk to you guys. It won't take me too long to get there. So Kahina is kidnapped. Well, at least her body is, but then she's undergoes some amazing restorative procedures, which are kind of super high-tech Imperial stuff, and she's being restored to life. However, the ship she's on is hit by pirates, and she's taken away, and she ends up ultimately in the hands of a kind of rookie pilot who has no idea what he's wandered into, and he basically captures Kahina and tries to bring her back. But unfortunately, when he wakes her up prematurely, the memory restoration isn't perfect, and so Kahina has lost her memory. And the only reason I mention that is because that's where she gets the name Salomé. It's basically a name given to her by this pilot, who basically has to think of something, and he calls her Salomé because he used to have a cat called Salomé, which once clawed him across the face, which, unsurprisingly, is exactly what Kahina does the moment she wakes up. So that's how she ends up with the name Salomé. Now, there are all sorts of adventures, so I won't spoil the book any further. If you want to read Elite Reclamation, you can. It's on Amazon. I don't need to plug it anymore. I'm sure you've all heard of it. There it is. I shall hold it up for the camera. Where's my camera? There it is. There you go. It's a book. You can get it on Audible, you can get it in paperback, and you can get it on Kindle or any kind of ebook readers. it's there if you want to kind of read it. You can dive into the lore of that at your own thing. It is official Elite Dangerous lore, but it's a narrative. It's a book. It's a story. Okay, so it's got all sorts of stuff in it that you might find interesting if you like reading. Okay, it's entirely up to you. Chris Jarvis and the Radio Theatre Workshop did a fantastic job of converting it into Audible as well. So it's really rather nicely done. I'm very impressed by what they did. They took it, another step up. But essentially, the premise of that entire story is that Salomé comes to terms with her imperial background and her newfound adventures in space that she'd never experienced before, and slowly becomes a slightly more rounded individual. Now, before the end of the book, she does fan the flames of war in this system here. And those of you who are in orbit space already may have noticed a few tourist points there. One of which talks about the war, the conflict that happened. I don't know if I can see that yet in my contacts tab. Battle of Keone. So the Battle of Keone was a significant naval confrontation between the Empire and the Federation, although the Federation lost, and you can read the story about that in Reclamation. And Reclamation is all about reclaiming the Prism system for its rightful owners. But who are the rightful owners of the Prism system? Well, that's a matter of debate. So that's where that kind of all comes from. At that point, in the sort of meta, so stepping back a moment, at that point, I had sort of finished the story. Okay, I had written the book. Salomé had done her things and it had adventures and it kind of rounded its sort of self out. But I had left a clue in the book. And there were reasons I'd left a clue in the book. And I'm going to read you. There's a small section, if I can find it here. When Kahina is in, or Salomé is in a hospital. And she encounters somebody strange, a strange old woman. Okay, a strange old woman. I'm just trying to find the right page. There we go. And this old woman seems to be an elite combateer from a long, long time ago. And she said something to Kahina. And it's basically this. Where is it? I just got to find it. Right, there we go. You've been to the frontier. This is Salomé basically asking this. To it, through it, and past it, the woman smiled. Don't tell no one, but I got as far as the Formidine Rift. Not many folks can say that. No one's gone past it and lived to tell the tale. The Formidine edge of the galactic arm. Take a line from Riot to Ridquat to the edge of the arm and keep going. The woman grimaced. The stars thin out. You can see the whole galaxy just hanging there. I took a fancy to going exploring after I lost. And she pauses, sadness creeping across her face. Had some time to spare. Quiet for the most part until what? Let's just say there's some serious out there. Stuff you wouldn't believe. No, really, no one believed me. Said it was all a fabrication. I had no proof, you see, and they edited my memory afterwards. It'll all come back to bite them one day. It's all there in the Imperial databank somewhere. And they thought the Thargoids were trouble. Going out to the frontier isn't for the faint-hearted, you know. You got to fight for it. I almost never made it back. You need a tough ship and more than enough talent behind the guns. And that is the first canon reference to what became the Formidine Rift. And the Formidine Rift is an area of the galaxy. You'll know about it. You can see it on the galactic map. It is, we'll go and click on it for you, out here. So we're in the core worlds, obviously, at the moment. And if we zoom out, and we zoom out, and we zoom out, way beyond the core worlds, you'll notice that the galaxy is nowadays divided into sectors. It wasn't like this in the early version of Elite. But as we zoom out, you'll notice that we've got these various different galactic sectors. And down here is, this sector here, is known as the Formidine Rift. And it's now marked on the map because we've been there, we've worked it all out. But back in the time, this was just an unknown area of space, and we didn't know what was out there. Now, in the early days of the game, Frontier invited the writers to. It's better viewed on the codex. You're quite right, actually. Yes, I keep forgetting the codex. There we go. That'll show it better. Good point. Discoveries. There we go. So you can see it here. We're here in Orion Spur. This is the Formidine Rift. There you go. I'd forgotten about that. It's not outrageously far out, particularly not for the jump ranges of ships we have today, but it was harder to reach back in the day. Okay, and in the lore, it was extremely difficult to reach because it was so far away from the core worlds, and the ships weren't capable of jumping so far. So it is a long way out, and we are almost into the system now, which is great. So I'll turn that back on. You can hear a little bit of the game. So that's the first reference. So Salomé encounters a strange woman who leaves this odd clue, something about Riot and Ridquat. Now Salomé knows nothing about space travel at this point, so she doesn't really understand what it means. It's only in the end of the book where Salomé and her pilot break into some Imperial databanks to find out whether there's any truth to this weird story, and they find out that there is. And then take a line from Riot to Ridquat and keep going. So where's Riot and Ridquat? Well, they're not very far away. For those of you who've been following the tour, you'll know that Riot and Ridquat are old world locations. They are near Zeon's, Tir Nisla, Lave, all that kind of good stuff. And if you line up, I can just about do. Where's Ridquat? There it is. There. And if I rotate the galaxy map around and line up Riot and Ridquat, it points to a certain direction in space. And that's your first clue. That was the first clue for the Formidine Rift. It's that away. It's out there. Now, people quickly noticed that that was pointing to a particular area of space. That was by design. Okay, that was by design. And what I'll do today for the first time is show you the document that I sent to Frontier with this mystery kind of encapsulated in it, because it's quite fun now to go back and show you how this sort of stuff was created. So here, let me just get myself out at Hiram's Anchorage, and then I'll show you the document. We can talk a little bit about what happened and why we end up with the Formidine Rift. We're just coming into range. Excellent. Now, I don't know if you know actually, but Hiram's Anchorage is a space station I named, and I put it in the book, and it's obviously in Elite Dangerous as well, a place we can go visit. It's actually named after my father. Now, he was, he was my dad, fondly remembered, but he died in 2012. Never got to see Elite Dangerous. He did see a couple of the videos, the promotional videos early on. He knew I was writing a book for Elite Dangerous, but he sadly died of cancer before he could see the game or see the book published. It's just one of those things. And so Hiram's Anchorage is actually named after my father. His name was Hiram Holroyd Wager. Oddly enough, his father was also called Hiram Holroyd Wager, and I would have been called Hiram Holroyd Wager, but my mum put her foot down and said that's not happening. Which I think I was probably wise in the sense that I would probably have been, it would probably have been a bit awkward at certain times in my life. But it would have been quite cool today to be able to say, my name is Hiram, son of Hiram, son of Hiram. It's sort of Lord of the Rings style. But I can't say that, so I am Drew, son of Hiram, which is about the best I can get. But Hiram's Anchorage is kind of a special place for me because it's named after my late father, who sadly passed away in 2012. So when you dock, you're required to raise a glass to his memory. So he got me my ZX Spectrum computer back in the 80s and got me into Elite and computer games and science and astronomy and stuff. So I do owe him a bit of thanks for that. What kind of name is Hiram? It's a biblical name. It's a name out of the Bible. My distant ancestors were quite religious types, and so named all of their children after characters from the Bible. And Hiram is a biblical name. I don't know what it means. I'll go look it up, but it's definitely in the Bible. That's where it comes from. So so you can partly thank my dad for the fact that I'm here doing this and we're all doing these sort of things. So there we go. But Hiram's Anchorage. So that's the meta of Hiram's Anchorage. The actual, the lore of Hiram's Anchorage is it's a mining facility built to exploit tantalum in the Prism system. That's what it's for. And so that's where we are. So let's pop round to the entrance of Hiram's Anchorage, and we can rendezvous there for various screenshots. Now the moon in the background is the Keone moon. That is where much of the action in the book does actually take place. So that's a cool place to visit as well. Obviously we can't land there yet, but hopefully we'll be able to land there at some point in the future. Here we go. I'll just park my Cobra out there, and then we can get I put that on the external view, and we can do screenshots and all the kind of good stuff that we normally do on the lore tour. So there we go. Right, there's my ship. Stationary. Not quite. Come on. No, backwards. The only problem with my HOTAS here is it doesn't quite have a detent for off, which is really irritating. I think I'll leave it there. One is virtually stopped. Right, there we go. So, and F9, and stop scrolling away. There we go. And I'll zoom out. There we go. So folks can congregate in front of Hiram's Anchorage. There we go. So that's perfect. And hopefully we'll have time to go and visit some of the mega ships that have arrived as well. So that'd be quite cool. Don't mind my joystick's drifting. There we go. That's better. Right. Cool stuff. Right. So. So the Formidine Rift is mentioned. Salomé discovers this weird mystery about the Formidine Rift. It's some weird thing that happened out in space, but she doesn't know anything more about it other than there's a clue at the end of the book. Let's go looking for it. And players got the sort of the same message. Okay, is there anything to this? It's in the book now. Way back when, way before Elite Dangerous was the thing, Frontier put a call out for the official writers, those of us who got the Kickstarter rewards, to say, we're looking at putting some mysteries and stuff in the game. Do you want to write a mystery? I thought, awesome, yes. I want to write a mystery. Now, we weren't, as I've mentioned many times, we weren't allowed to do Raxxla. Okay, so Raxxla was off limits. But I thought to myself, well, I'd quite like to do something sort of Raxxla-ish. And so the idea of the Formidine Rift was born. And it was therefore written into the book. And I sent the following document to Frontier in response to, there we go, just popping that up on the big screen. This is my, this is the document that describes how the Formidine Rift mystery will work. And it was designed to be a multi-part quest. And this was submitted to Frontier, and Frontier had a look at it and asked me questions, and it kind of went on from there. So this is using established lore, but stays away from current in progress material, avoids Raxxla, avoids other bits and pieces, and it follows on as a series of activities based around Senator Kahina. That's what it was all about. And it was playing off things like the kind of stuff the Raxxla was, loads and loads of space out there, and it was designed and built to be a sort of Da Vinci Code in space. Okay, the idea was I'd write a series of Galnet articles. They would have clues and weird stuff in them that players would then have to decipher and figure out where they're going. The Formidine Rift location here, as you can see, was kind of pegged in, and then we're here. You draw a line through the Heart and Soul Nebula, which clues came along later on, and then the Formidine Rift is out here somewhere, and there's stuff kind of going on. Okay, so that's basically what happened, and then we kind of played around with this and expanded it, and then I wrote a whole series of Galnet articles there. Oops, okay. Clicked on the wrong thing, and there's various bits and pieces, and it went backwards and forwards with Frontier quite a lot. So it's quite a detailed document that covers all sorts of things about what happens. And so that is the essence of the Formidine Rift story, kind of in the meta. We did get a chance to put assets in the game. And one of those assets was a Anaconda wreck. And I've got that one here as well. There it is, Elite Premonition. So down here is the original description of the end game, if you like, a wreck of an Anaconda, and where it's to be positioned, and how it's going to work, and various other bits and pieces. So, and the entries it would then display. Okay, so that's work was done as the game is being developed. So this sort of stuff is dumped into the game as a mystery for players to kind of slowly figure out and come across. And it's sort of left there to fester a bit, okay? Because Michael Brooks was quite keen for these things to unravel slowly. So a few people cottoned on to the end of the book, well, is there anything there? And then they started looking for things and various other bits and pieces. So, okay, so that's where that sort of quest came from. Now, the book did all right. The game did really well. Salomé was a character that people did like to have. And so I was asked to take that idea, develop it a little bit. And the game was obviously also developing as well. So Salomé becomes a little bit more than just a character in a book. She becomes a character in the game as well. So Frontier gave me permission to have a sort of NPC character, but it was actually a player operated character called Salomé that we could fly around and do things in the game, so people could see her and interact with her. So that's how that kind of bit working. Now, what that actually meant was that Salomé went on various quests and kept popping up and making speeches and dropping weird clues into the game that only certain players saw, and so people had to kind of form little bands of explorers and trying to figure out what was going on. Quite a few player groups were formed around Salomé based on the actions of it. Now, it was assumed that she was going to become a power play character at one point, and I basically said I'd rather she didn't, because then we got an opportunity to tell her story in a different way, because the power play characters were very, very static, and they couldn't do much because they were just sort of stuck. So I was quite keen for her not to be one, although a lot of people maybe thought that she would be, but because she, I wrote a bunch of Galnet articles that would put her in conflict with the power play characters quite deliberately, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So Salomé at the end of the story becomes, she starts playing politics. Her father is dead. He's been murdered. She comes back. Causes the Battle of Keone between the Federation and the Empire. The Empire wins that battle and sees the Federation off. She then takes the senatorship of Keone, thinking that's what she wants. Okay, she's reclaimed her planet, and then at that point, right at the end of the story, she realizes that actually being a senator, being in charge of the planet, is exactly not what she wants to do. She's had a taste of freedom, she's had a taste of space travel, she's had a taste of exploration, and actually that's what she's interested in, that's what gets her excited. She doesn't want to be a senator, she doesn't want all the administration. So at the end of the story, she hands over the administration to Ambassador Cuthrick, who is the guy now in charge of the Prism system, on behalf of the Empire, and she decides to pursue this quest for the Formidine Rift, and the mystery therefore involved in that. So she then goes off, and what happens to her in the interim is a bit weird. Okay, I've never specifically called it out quite deliberately to allow people to kind of wonder what she did, but she re-emerges a couple of years later. As the figurehead of a in-player game faction called the Children of Raxxla. And she extorts people across the galaxy to, sort of deny the Federation, deny the Empire, deny the Alliance, and just throw off the shackles and join her on exploration quests across the universe, looking for something, looking for clues, looking for some secrets in the darkness, and it's never entirely clear exactly what she's asking people to look for. Now there is a link here with the Dark Wheel. Now the Dark Wheel wasn't off limits to us as writers, only Raxler. Now the Dark Wheel, as we've talked about before, are a group of people who are searching, or perhaps have found, we're not quite sure, the Dark Wheel. And the Dark Wheel operates on many, many different levels. So I didn't deal with what I felt was the core of the Dark Wheel, some sort of inner circle. But Salomé certainly encounters people on the outside edges of the Dark Wheel and has interactions with him. In fact, the pilot who rescues her at one point in the story is almost certainly a member of the Dark Wheel himself, though he never admits it. So there's all sorts of little bits and pieces going on in that sort of stuff. But Salomé gets wound up in this, and she starts going on strange quests. And she goes into the Empire, having made a bit of a stir in the Federation. And when she's in the Empire, she makes some political statements. Everyone assumes she's running for power, like in power play. And then she suddenly just disappears. Her ship is impounded, found to be empty. Her quarters are searched, found to be empty, other than a medallion which has the word Salomé on one side and the Dark Wheel on the other. And she's gone. She's gone. And the story appears to stop at that point. Salomé disappears. Nobody knows what's happened. People in the Prism system are asked, what happened to her? Where's she gone? Ambassador Cuthrick basically says, I don't know. She didn't tell me. All she told me to do is to look after the Prism system, and Salomé has vanished. Okay, Salomé has vanished, and nothing more is heard of her. Now, there's a reason why the story goes like that. Okay. There's a meta. I'm afraid it's only a meta reason, and the meta reason is that I didn't know whether or not I was going to be able to write a sequel to Elite Reclamation or not. So the second book I wrote wasn't a certainty. It wasn't even in the pipeline at that point in time in the game. Frontier themselves were really busy building Horizons at the time, and didn't have that much bandwidth to spare on the writers. So while there'd been a lot of initial setup to all these mysteries and all the other bits and pieces that were in the game, a bit like now, I suppose, with the lack of Galnet and lack of CGs, there's a change of focus during the development of these games, and all the focus was being pushed onto Horizons, which meant there wasn't the bandwidth for doing other things. And so at that point, it was kind of a case of, are we doing a second book or anything? And I was getting kind of a lot of static back from Frontier at the time. And so what I did is I wrote the Galnet articles to leave it deliberately ambiguous, so we could either never hear from Salomé again, she's just disappeared, what happened to her, or if we do get an opportunity to come back into the story, then I can pick it up again and, she's reappeared. And as it happened, Frontier did come calling at one point and say, we'd like a second book, and can you pick up that story again and do this and this and this and this and this as well, and we also want lots of player interaction as well, so can you do all that please, Drew? And I went, yeah, I think so. And sort of signed on the dotted line, and off we went. At which point Salomé reappears, but she reappears on the opposite side of the galaxy. And she reappears at Beagle Point, and actually she gate crashed a live stream by Ed Lewis, which was very deftly organised by the Children of Raxler player group and Distant Worlds 1, I think it was. Ed didn't know what was going on. All he was told by Michael Brooks that something lore-wise would be happening that evening, and he'd had to keep his eyes out for it. So Salomé and the Children of Raxler, with the permission of the people who had organised Distant Worlds 1, unbeknownst to Ed Lewis, gate crashed the live stream, the Frontier live stream, and Salomé arrived with a massive escort of ships. Now, Ed was really not expecting this, because we were on the far side of the galaxy, having completed Distant World 1, and he wasn't expecting a whole bunch of ships to appear. And they suddenly appeared on the horizon, and I've got it on my hard drive somewhere, where Ed's still looking, what the hell's that? He sees all these massive phalanx of ships, and he assumes he's being invaded or something, and he's reassured as we kind of all land and we're all peaceable. But Salomé then gives a message, and he actually gives it to Ed and all the other people who were there, basically saying, there is trouble going on back in the bubble, there's a conspiracy, be very careful who you sell your exploration data to, we're searching for secrets in the void. And then she disappears again. Okay, she's heading back towards the bubble. And it seems she uncovered some sort of conspiracy going on in the core worlds. Now, that led to various different investigations, okay? And there was a series of Galnet articles around about this sort of time, talking about odd happenings, odd transmissions, coded words being sent around the bubble for various things. Some of them led to Tia Nizla, some of them led to other places, some of them had weird and wonderful codes in them, and all sorts of stuff was happening. So, and these slowly led players out to various different places. The Formidine Rift area was one, with the clues to roughly how the location was going. And there are other places as well. And we ended up, quite deliberately, with a competitive CG. And the idea was, I was testing the player base a little bit with this, to sort of see whether or not they would do the good thing, or the right thing, or the profitable thing. So I deliberately set up a CG where the underdogs, i.e. the children of Raxler, who were trying to unlock the conspiracy, were asking for exploration data from certain places. And the Federation got wind of this and then put out an opposing claim offering more money for the same information. And so the scene was sort of set for a competitive CG. And CGs were relatively new at the time. It was basically, will you support Salomé and the children of Raxler, who can't offer you much money, but you're doing the right thing, guys? Or will you just go, no, let's give it to the dirty feds and we'll rake in the cash? And Frontier said, well, we know what's happened. Frontier said to me, the Federation will win because players always go for the money. Players always go for the money. And I went, well, let's see. You know, if they do, that's the way the story goes. The children of Raxler will have to come up with an alternative way of unlocking the truth. But to everybody's surprise, kind of mine as well, players didn't. Okay, players supported the underdogs. The Federation CG didn't do well, and the other one won. The Children of Raxler group won the day, and so we were able to unlock the next part of the story because they'd actually managed to do it. And that gave us destinations in various different parts of the galaxy to go and investigate. Now this was shortly after the Horizons version of the game had come out, which allowed us to put things on planetary surfaces rather than just in space. So there were some hasty changes to the story, I'm afraid, in order to get some of this stuff and take advantage of some of the new tech. And so there were clues and various other bits and pieces set to lead players off into various parts of the galaxy. Now, as you know, there have been problems sometimes getting the Galnet articles out in the right order and in the right place, and getting some of the in-game assets to line up. It didn't all quite go to plan. And some of that was errors on my part. Some of it was the game had bugs and didn't work properly, and some of it was kind of Galnet formatting errors and things going out the right. It didn't work perfectly, but the idea was that players would be given clues to lead them across the galaxy to various different places and unlock these destinations where they would find further clues. And there were 3 places out in the galaxy. Now the names are based on the old map of the galaxy that players created back in the day, which I've been very fortunate I've been given a copy of. It's the old names. Now the Formidine Rift was the name that I given, which has survived. If you look at the map today, let me just go back into my ship a moment. If you go back into the codex, that one, isn't it? So the Inner Orion Spur, the Formidine Rift is a name that's stayed there from the beginning. Quite a lot of these places here, I'm trying to remember which ones. So the Conflux, for example, the Norma Arm, the Norma Expanse, Hawking's Gap. Some of these names have been picked up. These are names that were originally put on a galactic mapping project by the players. And they've been adopted by Frontier because they were so popular. Not all the names here are, but quite a few of them made it in. Okay, which is fantastic, but not all of them. But players were given coordinates in Hawking's Gap. I think the conflux, which I don't think it was that far out actually, but maybe it was. So it was Hawking's Gap, conflux area, and the Formidine Rift to go and explore and try and find things. Okay, and the idea was that players would then uncover clues to something out there. And ultimately they did. Okay, ultimately they did. Now, in the process, the anaconda, and this got me into all sorts of trouble because, maybe in hindsight I shouldn't have done it, but I took advantage of it because I thought it was cool. So the anaconda wreck was the only kind of wrecky type thing that we had in Elite Dangerous at the time. So the anaconda wreck was put here. I can't remember the name of the place. There we are, 3D JFXC0. Way out in the midst of nowhere, basically, and nobody spotted it for years because it was out there. But if you had got close to it, it would have transmitted you some text, okay, and that would kind of be that. What we took the advantage of, because one of the things that came out just around about that time was the megaships, okay, and one of the devs rang me up. Actually, I was at work at the time. Rang me up at work and said, "Drew, it's so and so from Frontier." And I went, "Oh, hello. How can I help you?" And he said, "We're putting megaships in the game. Would you like one?" And I went, "That sounds awesome." what do you mean? So they said, we can upgrade. Nobody's picked up your wreck yet. We've checked. Nobody's been there. We can upgrade it. And I kind of thought, well, that kind of sounds much cooler. And one of the things they were doing with the megaships, they were putting voice actors into them. So they basically said, look, we can upgrade that. We can voice act the logs rather than just have static text. And I kind of went, yeah, well, let's do it. That sounds really, really good. So somewhere in here, I think I've got. There we go. This is Frontier actually sent this. This was very, very strictly NDA at the time. Of course, it isn't now. This is the. This might be interesting. Is it going to work? Why is it not loading? The dark wheels intercepted me. There we go. They sent me this. They sent me the wireframe for the first ever megaship. This was the Zuara, this was what they were going to replace that wreck with. And I thought, well, that looks awesome. I hadn't even seen a fully rendered version, and then they sent me a fully rendered version one shortly afterwards, which looks like that. And they said that's what it will look like. And I went, that looks awesome, because nobody ever seen anything like that in Elite before. And so the Zuara, which is part of the Formidine Rift mystery, is was suddenly a much more impressive thing. And when you went to the Zuara, you get these amazing voice acted logs, which I had written, but the actors turned them into amazing kind of logs. And that was a new thing for Elite Dangerous, so it seemed a bit of a shame not to take advantage of that, so I did. To kind of make that story better. But that was only part of the mystery, because actually when you visited all these sites and when you went to the ship, you uncovered a story which led you back again to a conspiracy going on in the core worlds. And the idea was that 50 years before the time of Elite Dangerous, a group of clandestine people, not the Dark Wheel, but another kind of yet another Machiavellian, weird, wonderful organisation, had some plans, and what they were concerned about was that humanity was very much under threat. If I can get my joystick to stay out, it's rolling a bit. It's a bit weird. I think my dead spot is wrong, or somewhere. There we go. Let's hold it. Humanity was under threat from the Thargoids, and this organisation, which had massive, massive power, and they're called the Club. They're called the Club, and you can look them up on the Elite Wiki if you want to know a little bit more about them. Tiny bit of spoilers for the second book, which we'll come to in a moment. The Club had been preparing humanity for the invasion of the Thargoids, but they weren't preparing humanity in a you must do this. They were basically manipulating economies, politics, systems, entire star systems, entire groups of star systems, even the Empire and the Alliance and the Federation. They were manipulating them to their advantage. And the idea basically was that the club was seeding worlds out in space as places humanity could flee to if the battle against the Thargoids did not go well, because they considered it a major threat to the existence of humanity. But crucially, what they didn't do is they didn't tell humanity at large that this threat was coming. In fact, they suppressed it. So one of the reasons why the story of the Thargoids is a bit weird is because we did have a fight with them years ago, and then the knowledge has been quietly pushed away and kind of pushed into the realm of myth and legend. So most people in the Elite Dangerous universe don't even believe the Thargoids are real things. They just think they're stories from the depths of space that spacers like you and me, us commanders, tell to make ourselves sound more exciting. The vast majority of the population don't believe the Thargoids are a threat. And that's how the game was set up at the time. The Thargoids were advancing, their technology was superior, there's a real chance that humanity would be overwhelmed by the Thargoids and we would have to flee. The bubble would burn. It would all be chaos and destruction. And quite a cool story. Okay. Now the club had seen this going, or seen this coming, and basically attempted, using the technology of the time 50 years before, to look for colonizable worlds out in the depths of space, a long way away from the core worlds, thousands and thousands of light, 10,000 light years in each direction, in different directions. And so trying to find places that we could flee to, and sent out ships to go and survey these worlds, and if possible, catalogue them and bring them back. The frameshift drive made all that moot. The frameshift drive made all of that completely pointless, because suddenly ships could travel much further. So all these massive ships that had gone out there were, effectively now useless. But even more unpleasantly, the club had deemed that when the survey information was determined and transmitted back, the crews on these ships were all given a drug that basically made them effectively kind of lie down and die. And they were killed at the destination by pre-programmed commands, and so that once they had the survey information, even the evidence of them going out there would be hidden, except for a strange woman by the name of Rebecca, who stumbles on this somehow, leaves a clue in the Imperial databanks, and then mentions it to Salomé when she's in the hospital in the first story. And the reason she mentions it there, and the reason it's hidden in the Imperial databanks, is this group of people are extremely proficient at tracking people down and erasing their memories, which is a thing that you can do in the Elite Dangerous universe. But this woman knew that her memories were being erased, so she kept storing copies of her memories in different places. So it all gets a bit convoluted. And she has to sometimes go back and remind herself of what she's previously learned, because she knows her memory has been tampered with. So she's able to reconstruct her previous memories and keep doing the research. But it takes her several years to unpick this stuff that she's discovered, because her memory has been tampered with. And she sort of effectively then recruits Salomé into this and asks her to go looking for it as well. And therefore Salomé gets embroiled in this conspiracy, which is an attempt to save humanity from the incoming Thargoids, but not tell humanity about them, with the mantra that if they don't know, they won't care and they won't panic. And if we have to evacuate, we'll only evacuate the cool people, the worthwhile people. We'll let the rest of the population of the bubble burn and be destroyed by the Thargoids, and we'll start again in some other part of the galaxy. And that was sort of the setup for the Formidine Rift story. That's what you unpick as you kind of go through, and that was the design of the story. And that's how the lore of Elite was at the time. The Thargoids were coming. They were going to be devastatingly powerful and overwhelming, and it was quite possible the bubble would burn, which would be quite good. Now Salomé gets embroiled in this, and players were encouraged to go out to the Formidine Rift and search for little things and bring these kind of clues back, and that would trigger the next piece of the story. It was all happening in Galnet, it was all happening in game. Salomé would turn up in game, in character, and say things and direct people into different directions. And if you follow that story, she gets kidnapped. And the cool thing about this was players were interacting with the story all of the time. So, for example, when Salomé first got kidnapped by the Empire and put on trial, the children of Raxxla attacked Senator Patrius's flagship in the Otiensis system, and that ended up in the book because it was a significant event. Because actually, what happened was they kind of turned people against them because they attacked Senator Patrius's ship without provocation, although that their leader had been held by the Empire, which is obviously not very nice. But that meant a lot of other player factions in the game decided that they were terrorists and started fighting with the Children of Rexler, and it caused some people who were allied with the Children of Rexler to be to be caught in a difficult place as to whether to maintain their alliances or break their alliances and all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of player group interaction and some very, very cool stuff happening at the time. And so all this was stuff was happening in the back. Now there were many factions involved, and if you read the second book, you'll see a lot of familiar names and familiar factions of the time. And this is about the year 3302 and 3300 going on at that particular point in time. So that sets us up for then what happens next. So at that point, I was composing this second book about the setup from the previous book, all the player actions, and obviously in-game events and Galnet stuff as well. So all that sort of stuff was going on. Yeah, so Loren's Legion was a player faction. It was caught in a rock and a hard place there. They sort of were ostensibly supporting the Children of Raxler and Salomé, but as it started becoming clear that Salomé was operating beyond the law, and the Children of Raxler were making attacks on Imperial targets, Loren's Legion was a loyal Imperial faction. So what do? And but they were tied to the Lorens as well in the Prism system. So all sorts of stuff got very politically complicated for the players, which was by design. Okay, I wanted that sort of stuff to emerge, and it was fun to see the players wrestling with the politics. And trying to figure out what the right thing to do. And I was watching all the time, because the beauty of writing the second story was that I could take stuff that I was observing and put it into the book. And so the wranglings between all the player factions and their victories and their defeats was story material. Very, very cool. Very, very cool concept. Not something that we've seen repeated since, unfortunately, but it was very, very cool at the time. So that sets us up for about the year 3302, 3303. And at this point, I'll show you the second trailer, which tells you where the story had got to. And as you saw at the end, some weird and wacky codes get put all over the place. There were weird and wacky codes galore. Okay, there was lots and lots of wacky codes. Yeah, so right on, Commanders. So the idea was, the idea behind all of that was that players got to contribute to the lore, that it was an ongoing story. But whilst there was a core thread, players could change the way things happened, and that was the whole point of the Salomé and the Formidine Rift story, is that players could influence it. So depending on whether players found something, or players fought each other and won CGs or lost CGs or took over each other's systems, all that sort of stuff, I was watching that and grabbing notes and going, oh, okay, so they're doing that, are they? And I was able to respond to that by writing Galnet articles that would reflect what players were doing, and then basically dump new story into the game based on player activity. So, I've got examples of that here. If I quickly show you here for Elite Dangerous, Elite Premonition. So research, is it? No, it's not research. It is, where's the stuff I want? Player events. There we go. So this is all sort of stuff that I was making notes of the different things. So Federation Hellraiser Expeditionary Force was doing something. The first contact with the Thargoids happened during this period of time, so of course I picked up on that. There was a war in Mukoji between different factions, so that went into the book. Commander Drifted Island encountered something in an exclusion zone, that was significant. COR had a list of allies during the CG, people who were working for them, people who were working against them, all that was noted down. Players were involved in the narrative, okay? They were defining bits of it, and I was writing Galnet articles to respond. And the sort of Galnet articles that were coming out here were, where we got them? Where are the actual Galnet articles themselves? Should be in here somewhere. That's the CGs. It must be in here. Maybe that one. Maybe it's these ones. Here we go. This is the entire document. So yeah. So this is all sort of stuff that was happening. So some of this was background stuff. So these are events, and you can see here is July 3302, August 3302. These were key things that I was ticking off as they happened and making sure they got pushed into the game things. But then players would start taking things into their own hands. And so different articles would come out depending on what players did. Lots of fun was had, okay? But ultimately, players discovered the basis, they discovered the story, and then they were able to react. Now, in the lore, Salomé uncovered this conspiracy with the help of all of her friends, which were basically all the elite players who were allied with her. I had a deadline to publish the book. So I had to get it done, I think, by the summer, which meant actually I had to have the drafts finished in May, ready for editing. And what that meant is I needed to finish the story. The book needed an ending. And so, I determined that there should be an end game player event. We all know about that. Okay, I've already done a stream on that before the lore tour started. So we know about the story of Salomé. But what happened in the actual story is that Salomé discovered this conspiracy. She wanted to tell everybody in the galaxy about it. Now, in the lore, her ship was being jammed by bounty hunters and people who were pursuing her. She couldn't transmit from her ship, not across the entire galaxy, only across the local. She needed a way to be able to transfer the information to everybody simultaneously. And she had two ways of doing that. She had one, which was to reach a set of listening beacons that she'd been made aware of in the T-Org system, which would be able to broadcast her message to everybody who cared to listen. That was one. The problem with that was she was on the wrong side of the galaxy at this point, because she had had a bounty put on her head of several million credits and had thus had to flee away from the core world. So she was outside the core world at the time, and the place she needed to get to was in T-Org, which is right in the middle of the core world. So she had to either get to there. She had a backup plan because she knew this was very risky, and the backup plan was that she would hide copies of her testimony, if you like, and leave it in a hidden location somewhere along the route that wouldn't be discovered. And she'd only provide clues to that location if she didn't make it. She'd basically arrange for other people to be aware of that. So the idea was, again, relatively straightforward. we all know how it went down. But in the lore, Salomé was a desperate attempt to transmit a galactic message to basically say, you are being conned, everybody. This Thargoid threat is real. Everybody, there's this core power called the Club who are trying to suppress this knowledge, and you must effectively kind of wake up sheeple. Okay, it was sort of kind of classic conspiracy nut type thing, nobody, of course, in the player community knew what the message was in advance. Only I knew what the message, and Frontier knew what that message was in advance. And the message basically was to kind of blow open the Club conspiracy, which is the one thing that they shouldn't be able to stand, is having their affairs put into the public limelight. And that was what Salomé was attempting to do. That was what her message was going to be all about. As we know, she was assassinated in the year 3303 in the Numclaw system by, in the lore, Commander Besieger, who was in the pay of Denton Patrius. So the Empire actually killed Salomé in the lore. Obviously, in the meta, we know it was Commander Harry Potter. And that story's been told many, many times. Not planning to go back there again. So that was it, and it was basically supposed to be a fight of the chase and all those sort of kind of things. Now we know that the game wasn't really up to doing that, and in hindsight we could have done things all sorts of different ways, but it's still a point in the lore that occurred. Okay, so Salomé was this stuck up imperial woman who learned to better herself a bit, managed to build a kind of companionship of explorers. She actually was called the patron saint of explorers at one point in Galnet, and she garnered this following. She was a very charismatic figure. She garnered a following, almost a zealot, almost a zealot-like following to her cause, which was to uncover the conspiracies in the universe. She found a big one. This whole business with the Club. She was. It's very much conspiracy theory stuff. She was planning to blow it all wide open, but she never made it. She was killed before she got there. She was assassinated, and it seemed the story died at that point. But Salomé was wiser than that. She knew there was a high chance that she wasn't going to make it, so she made some posthumous logs that would be revealed after it became clear that she had in fact died. And clues to those were left for commanders to find. And eventually they found them in a medical facility, in the Panacea Medical Centre. And you can look all these things up. And the history of Salomé is well documented in the Wikipedia articles now, so you can go there and listen to those logs as well. And so posthumously, Salomé got to reveal the conspiracy. And I'd left that story there for Frontier to go, right, okay, so in that story, there were two opposing branches of Thargoids, one called the Klaxons and one called the Eresrians. And there was a big story about how there was a sort of civil war going on between the Thargoids. And that was based on the lore I was given at the time, which was never refuted to me. And that's what the book was based on. That's what all the in-game events on. That's what Salomé's sacrifice, if you like, was based on. The Thargoids are coming. These people are trying to cover it up. Get yourselves ready for a big invasion. And that's where my involvement in the story stopped. Salomé was dead. Okay, she had died. She had been killed. Again, I think she died 3 times actually. Once in the first book, and I think she kind of died twice in the second book. Well, the one that actually she only faked her demise. Lots of good sort of political shenanigans going on. So Salomé was definitely dead. One of the things that I was very clear on in the final event was that it was Iron Man rule. So if she died, she died. Okay, that was really important to me, was that the players could, collectively affect the law. So Salomé was going to make it, or she wasn't going to make it, and she didn't make it. She died. She's the first, possibly the first significant character in the universe of Elite Dangerous to actively have been killed. And so she died tragically at the age of 28 in the year 3303. She's dead. She can't come back. Okay. So in the law, she's gone. All right. And it seems therefore her story comes to a close at that point. And in my head, that was kind of, okay, well, Frontier, I know the Thargoids are coming. We all know the Thargoids are coming because that's been telegraphed to us. Like, the Frontier, you go do the Thargoid thing now because we've set it all up. All the stories there. The Eresrians and the Klaxians are going to have a Barney. The humanity is going to get involved. Maybe the bubble will burn. Maybe humanity and all the commanders in Elite Dangerous will turn the tide and beat the Thargoids back. I kind of was just going to get my popcorn at this point and watch, okay, and see what happened because it was quite cool. But what actually happened was that the Thargoid invasion kind of fizzled out. And all the lore that I'd been given about the two versions of the Thargoids having a civil war, and all the other stuff, because the club was not my invention. The club was a thing that Frontier had given me. That stopped and wasn't picked up. And I don't know whether that was lack of interest, lack of resources, lack of, lack of changing priorities, or whatever happens. But the stories at that point seems to have kind of atrophied, and we've kind of got to a place now where we don't really have a story going on in Elite Dangerous anymore, which I think is a bit of a shame, and I've mentioned that before, so we won't get into that anymore. But that's how I left it in 3303, 3304, with the Thargoids coming in, ready to do their, scarily kind of thing. And then everything else since has kind of not been me. And I've just been watching it and kind of just playing it as a thing. And so, well, you say Michael Brooks had, Braben wouldn't allow the bubble to burn, which is a shame. Michael Brooks and I were certainly quite keen to have the bubble burn. We thought that'd be an awesome kind of post-apocalyptic thing, but maybe it would have gone too far. But who knows? But Salomé died, and she died trying to expose the conspiracy of the club, which was basically, we will keep the population subdued. We will try and deal with the Thargoid threat, but if it all goes wrong, we will save the righteous and leave the rest of the scum behind for the Thargoids to destroy. And Salomé's view on that was, either we try and save everybody, or it's not worth trying to save anyone at all. And it's a kind of classic story, but that's what Salomé was doing. She was trying to save all of humanity, and she died in trying to save her. And that's how she ended. So a bit of a tragic story, really, and that's what she was. And so the Formidine Rift was one of 3 locations where the club had been trying to find alternative places for humanity to exist should the bubble have been destroyed by the Thargoids. That's what the Formidine Rift mystery was all about. So it is solved, okay? We can now talk about it and go revisit it and go to the places. They're still all there. You can go and visit the megaship. In fact, that's what we're going to do from now on this lore tour. We're going to take a trip out there and go and experience that again for ourselves. Go and see the megaship, because it's still out there. We can go and revisit some of those sort of things, but that story arc is, if you like, complete. It's now history. It's now part of the lore that's happened, I don't know whether it's going to be picked up. We have just recently, I've noticed, had another Galnet article about some medical stuff, so maybe Galnet is coming back from the dead, which would be really cool if there's going to be some more stories. So hopefully we'll see some, maybe with now that the fleet carriers have landed and that the new era and Odyssey is coming. So maybe there'll be some new story in there as well. We'll have to wait and see. But that's kind of where Salomé. That kind of brings us up to the modern era in Elite Dangerous, where we've got fleet carriers and all the different sorts of ships and all that sort of stuff. So her secret message was relations to Earth-like worlds. Well, no, her secret message was the message that the conspiracy is actually genuinely happening, and she was kind of exhorting everybody to rise up and resist the club. That's what she was attempting to do. And you can speculate as to whether she achieved her aim or not. Certainly people tried to do so. there was an operation called Serious Business, which was trying to break into the Sirius Corporation, and other player factions tried to do things in the Coal 70 sector and all those various bits and pieces as well. So there's a lot of player activity that happened there, trying to push the story onwards. But it seemed that Frontier had other priorities at that point, and storytelling sort of fizzled away a little bit. So that's what we did. That was the story of Salomé. That was the story of the Formidine Rift. And while it lasted, I think, but I enjoyed it. I hope some of you did as well. For those of you who were there at the time, you probably remember the Galnet articles and some of the stuff, because happening at the same time of all this was the sort of prequel, the predecessor to the Thargoids as well, which was the Sap 8 containers and the unknown artifacts and all of those kind of things were happening at the same time. So there was an odd mystery of the Thargoids. Salomé was uncovering conspiracies. The Dark Wheel faction in Shanata Desri was still there. There seemed to be all sorts of mysteries happening all over the time. But there were multiple writers doing multiple bits of content and doing multiple threads. We had the whole Colonia thing happen at the same time, all that sort of stuff. So it was all going on. Distant Worlds 2 actually. Not Distant Worlds. Distant Worlds 1, the original Distant Worlds 1, the return of those explorers was the trigger for the next part of the story. So we folded that into player events as well, and there was a lot of cool stuff happening, and that's how the story kind of rolled at the time. So it was good fun. I was able to write 2 books because at the end of the day, that's what I do. I'm a writer. So I wrote these 2 books, Reclamation and Premonition, which are Elite Dangerous stories, okay, and they stand alone, and you can go back and read them and still enjoy them even now. They're effectively kind of historical now, I suppose, in terms of lore of Elite Dangerous. They are takes on the lore, which you can go and read, and there are assets in game which you can go and visit and so on and so forth. But I'm not aware that any of those story points are now being actively pushed forward. Which always to me seems a bit of a shame, because there's so much storytelling possibility in the game that we could do, but who knows? Maybe it's coming back. So it was a period of time in game. So Salomé leaves behind, as you can see, Salomé leaves behind a legacy here. We have Hiram's Anchorage still remains. The Keone Moon here is still orbiting as it ever was, and it's still in the hands of Ambassador Cuthrick and those sort of things as well. So things have gone on. They have actually. Thank you very much for mentioning that, Azai. There are some unofficial but very good actually sequels to my stories. So if you want to dig those out. There are some various other bits and pieces, and there is one character left. I've kept her on reserve, and as I already mentioned her name, there was one character from the story of Premonition and Salomé and everybody else, an NPC character who has been seen in game and had some roles to play with the story. And if you read the book, you'll find out a little bit more about her and why she's important. She's still alive, okay? In the lore, she's still alive. So if you see a player by the name of Alessia Verdi, she is an NPC who's involved with the events of Salomé and everything else and the Formidine Rift, and is still out there somewhere in the universe of Elite Dangerous. She's sort of waiting for an opportunity to come back. If that opportunity ever presents itself, if I get to write more stuff, then I've got a hook and a way back into the universe, and so she's an NPC who does occasionally pop in and still do things in the game. So keep an eye out for her. If you search for Alessia Verdi in your friends list or on the commanders list, you should be able to find her, and she will accept friend requests. So she is an NPC who has connections with the Salomé lore, and she's still active out there somewhere doing things. So you can still join her and join in things. So yeah, she's definitely out there doing things. We want another novel from you too. Well, I am working on other novels, as you know, but not unfortunately elite ones. I have asked multiple times, and there doesn't seem to be an appetite for it at the moment, which is Frontier's gift to give. So I can't force the hand on that one, which is yeah. So feel free to petition them on my behalf, and I'd gladly write another one, and quite happily write more Galnet stuff in game and all those kind of good things, because we need some more lore. Okay, I mean we've covered everything. We could go over and do it all again, but we've covered the Federation, we've covered the Empire, we've covered the Alliance, we've covered the Thargoids, we've done Inro, we've done Galcop, we've done the Old Worlds, we've done Lave, we've done Riot, we've done Ridquat, we've done the Guardians, we've done Salomé, we've done the Formidine Rift. We're out of lore now. We need more lore to talk about. So and there's plenty of stuff in the background of Elite that could be expanded. There's lots of unanswered questions. I mean, Raxler we know is a big unanswered question. Okay, so where do the Thargoids come from? They're a space race that's millions of years old. Why have they either not dominated the entire galaxy by now? Why are they content to just sit in a small sector of the galaxy? What happened to Jasmina Halsey? What did she see? All of those sort of things. Okay. There's an artifact found on Mars. There are alien things found in the solar system. Where are they from? What race created them? Are they Thargoid artifacts, or are they something else? Don't know is the answer to all of these questions. And another one is there's a some sentient AI that escaped into deep space, so that there were clearly some problems caused by that sentient AI deep in the lore of Elite Dangerous, but it's not been expanded. We don't know. All we know is they escaped into this deep space and they never were seen again. Could they come back? Do they hate humanity because humanity banished them or tried to destroy them? There's another fantastic piece of Elite Dangerous lore that there's no way to expand it at the moment, but it could be expanded by people like me. All the sort of stuff writers would do. It doesn't have to be me, but writers could take that and go, right, let's make a thing. It's all possible. It's all doable. And like you said, there's loads of permit lock systems out there as well that are just locked off for reasons. Who's really behind the Pilots Federation? What about the Dark Wheel? We are trying to do that with an in-game initiative at the moment, which is very good. All of those sort of things. So there is loads of potential for the lore to be expanded and new stories to be told. It doesn't need to be me. It could be anybody. But let's why can't we do it? Come on, let's do exciting stuff in the game with story and stuff. And the Salomé story was an example of, I suppose, the art of the possible. It was mostly written just by me. There was quite a lot of help from Frontier with assets and coordination and publishing, all that sort of stuff, which is great. But it was just really one writer doing that bit, and Michael Brooks was doing the kind of the Thargoid story. If you had 3 or 4 people employed to constantly chuck story into the game, I reckon you could have something really, really, really special. Particularly if they were coordinated and they swapped threads and connected things and did weird stuff, and I think it would be awesome. So, but it's kind of frustrating we can't do it because it's all there. It's all there to do. But anyway, so those are the possibilities. So anyway, we are here. We are still here in the Prism system, and I know there are some fleet carriers around. So let's go and visit some of our fleet carriers. Let's say loads of them have arrived recently. So what have we got here? We've got the Rat's Nest. That's the Fuel Rats, I believe. So welcome to the Fuel Rats. The Fafnir. Don't recognise that one. Nightwish. The Ghost of Salomé. I think we should go and visit that one. The Valiant. The Indestructible. We saw that, I think, in Heora. The Vimicious Canid. The Red Dwarf. Or maybe we should go and Wimbledon Common again. And the Tanalorn. Oh, Tanalorn. That's now, literally, that is from Michael Moorcock, I believe. So whoever that is, that's a good reference. But I think we've got to go and visit the Ghost of Salomé. I think that's definitely got to be visited. So I'm going to go there. So if you'd like to join me at a fleet carrier, let's go and visit the Ghost of Salomé. Why not? I'm just going to let this asp do its thing. It's a bit close. Let's go off and do that. So that looked quite good. We're in the Prism system and then we see the Ghost of Salomé. I think that's quite good. So, Wintermute. Tanalorn is my carrier. So was that a Michael Moorcock reference or not? Was I off base with that one? Fafnir is a dragon in Norse mythology. Okay, it's appropriate name for a drake. That's a great one. Ah, brilliant. That's a great name. I haven't heard that one. I need to do a bit more Norse mythology. I've mostly done Greek mythology, as you probably figured out by the names of the planets in the Prism system. Yeah, I like things like that. But mythology is very cool, of course. Mythology is extremely cool indeed. Whoa, loads of people in frameshift. Quite hard to see. I lost the... I can't actually see anything now. Oh, I clicked onto the wrong ship. I think I clicked. There we go. I must have unclicked something. A frameshift blindness. Yes, that's right. The rat scare is not official, but it's a rescue carrier picked up a lost commander. Ah, okay, excellent. Wintermute. Yes, it's Moorcock, Eternal Champion. Ah, good. I really liked the Hawkmoon Castle Brass stuff. Really, really, really good story, those. Definitely worth recommending. So here we go, the Ghost of Salomé, which is oddly appropriate, I think. It's probably a good point. And this kind of brings us full circle, doesn't it? Because the game is now the fleet carriers are the latest kind of thing that's been added into the game, which is after all this time we've had some content, which is nice, some new stuff going on. I'm a little bit humbled actually that people are still naming assets after Salomé after all this time, because this is a long time ago in the game. 3 years now since Salomé died, and it's still a point of discussion, I suppose. For it's a very nice looking ship. There we go. Just going to fly alongside it. I'll try and get some screens. There we go. Let's get close. See how big this fleet carrier actually is, because I know they're enormous. There we are. Let's bring it to a halt. Let's go to external camera there. Look at that. Try and get my... There we go. So the Ghost of Salomé. I should turn the lights on. There we go. Oddly enough, there with the we can see the Barnard's Loop in the background, which of course the constellation of Orion, which and somewhere out there is where Salomé died. So towards the Tian Isla system, which is where the Enumclaw system is, quite a long way out. I'm not sure why. There we go. It's not rolling so much now. I could always bring Salomé back in the shower scene, and it was all. No, I mean I do tend to follow the advice of good writers, which is kill your darlings. If you've got a character like that, make an end of it that's worth memorising. I'm sure people are still talking about Salomé, mostly because of the infamy of Commander Harry Potter and everything associated with that, but also from an in-game perspective. It was a far more powerful narrative story for her to have died and had an end than it is for her to still be alive. Because if you think about it, in some ways now I'm glad she did die, because had she not died, there would have been, she would still be alive and having to be kind of doing something in the universe of Elite Dangerous. And given that Frontier have kind of dialed back on the story, it would have fizzled out in not a very elegant way. She would sort of be out there somewhere doing something, but there would be what happened to Salomé? Nobody would know. There would be no end to that story. It would fizzle out. The fact that she died and it was all kind of, oh my God, she's died, is actually better from a storytelling perspective. So from that perspective, I'm kind of not pleased that she died, but I think it makes for a better story than otherwise necessarily it would have done. I don't know why that's drifting. It's annoying. But anyway, come on, stop. I might go back to that mode there. There we go. It's a bit annoying that's drifting around. I think the dead zone on my joystick isn't quite right for some reason. Something's clunking. Anyway, there we go. It's rolling a bit, but that's okay. gives you a sense of scale of these fleet carriers. They're enormous machines, aren't they? So it caused, Salomé's death and the ramifications of what happened coming out of that did cause quite a lot of player groups some trouble, in terms of what they did next, because it was an outcome that, whilst it could have been anticipated, it wasn't the one that they hoped to have. So it did cause some player groups and some individuals. So I do apologise for all of those sorts of things that caused people to change. But that's, it was gameplay. It was engaging. It was a story that was being told. That was kind of the point of it all. All sorts of kind of good stuff, fun. So what else can I say about it? I mean, she was deliberately written to be a character that people would love or hate. She was deliberately written not to be particularly nice, not to be particularly kind of necessarily admirable. She was also a character who made mistakes. She precipitated a conflict which ended the lives of many military personnel in the Federation and in the Empire. She murdered people. She caused a lot of other people a lot of harm and grief. She misled people. She kind of effectively sort of almost hypnotized people into following her. She definitely manipulated people to her own ends. So she wasn't a nice person. Okay, she was a conflicted individual, and she had a lot of issues basically. She's not a person I would particularly like to meet. She had a nasty habit of running you through with the sword if she didn't like you, and that was the way she did. And she, people who betrayed her, she dealt with very, very harshly. She was not really a big fan of justice. She would determine the outcome of the events, and she would just kill people if they didn't agree. She was very, very harsh. She was not a lovable character at all, and she met her fate. She was trying to do the right thing, but she had a very odd way of going about it, I think is the way to summarise that. She was an enigmatic character by design, and I wanted people to mistrust her. And there were certainly people on the forums and on Twitter and people who sent me emails basically saying no, she was bad, she deserved to die, quite rightly in the universe. She was a terrorist, because she incited people to murder other people on the scantiest of evidence, and she was a zealot, and she was completely self-absorbed, and she was only doing it for her own benefit. So she got what was coming to her. To other people, she was a heroine, fighting for freedom, fighting for self-determination, fighting for the truth and for justice, and all those kind of good things. And they would follow her everywhere. So she engendered those sort of characteristics in her followers. And so people, whether or not you liked her, or whether or not you hated her, whether or not you followed her, you had an opinion on Salomé, and that was the aim I was aiming for. So she was a woman who lived and died in the later years of the Elite Dangerous Law, born in 3275, died in 3303, assassinated by agents of the Empire who were trying to restrict the message that he had, that humanity was being misled by shadowy powers beyond the view of most people, and she died trying to deliver that message. She uncovered, maybe, and players can make their own minds up as to whether it really was a conspiracy or not, based on what's happened since. And Salomé's lawyers are going to sue me for defamation, sue, cripple and sneer. But her story came to a tragic end. She was killed. She was killed in space, and her followers have been forced into hiding or forced into different lives, and the revolution that she possibly was leading collapsed and disappeared. She's just become another martyr in history who did things, and then history has moved on since. And that's kind of where we leave the story of Salomé and the Formidine Rift. You can still go and visit the places. We're in fact going to go and do that. So the Law Tour, whilst the Law Tour itself is over at the end of today, we are planning an extended kind of homage expedition out to the Zawara, which is the megaship that Salomé and friends located. which is out in the Formidine Rift itself. So if you're up for that, we'll be meeting next week in the Ridquat system to prep long-range ships. You're going to need a long-range exploration vessel to get out there, okay? Really recommend a ship with greater than 40 light years jump range. 50 plus is probably even safer. You can do it in a 30 light year ship, but it is tricky in places. But quite a lot of other commanders are going along there to support. So there'll be quite a few of us going. So if you want to go and visit the Zoara, the first ever mega ship in Elite Dangerous, which is the a focal point of the Formidine Rift story, listen to those logs for yourself about what happened out there. We're going to be planning a trip out there the next few weeks, and it's going to take us about 6 weeks to get out there. We're taking it in relatively easy stages so that people can catch up and potentially do other things then, and then the extended lore tour will complete at that point. So there we go. But what it remains for me, I've just got a few. There we go. I've got a few images here actually of some of these things that I've been talking about. So let me just pop these up. So we have Salomé herself. This was an image of her before she moved to the Prism system, and Salomé in her kind of imperial finery for during the time on Keone. The terrorists or the reclamists who encountered and tried to take back the Prism system from the Imperials after it was it was bombed. And these are all concept art images I used to write the original story, by the way. Kahina was obviously killed, stabbed through the heart with the sword, usually does the job, and then she was dead, or was she? This is a concept art that I built in Space Engine for the Prism system. So I actually built myself a Cobra Mark III ship, because Elite Dangerous the game didn't exist at this point, of course, and so I built myself an orbital factory there and had this kind of habitable moon using Space Engine. The Formidine Rift we've talked about, of course, this area of the galaxy over here, that's the location of those sort of mysteries. Salomé flew a ship called the Seven Veils, which was an Imperial clipper, and that was destroyed in the Enumclaw system, which is where she met her fate. She was embraced by player factions. She was the leader of the Children of Raxxla group, and they produced artwork for that as well. And then just before her death, we had a few screenshots of her flying her ship. You can see there again the Barnard's Loop in the background, and Salomé herself flying ship. Now, she had a bob haircut in those days because we didn't have any better haircuts for women. They're slightly better now, slightly more realistic, but it is that was the end of Salomé. She did die in the year 3303, and that was the end of her story. So there we go. Kind of a lockdown haircut, maybe an efficient haircut for flying through space. So that brings us all up to date. We've started with the ancient lore of Earth. We've moved into the Federation. We've done the Alliance. We've done the Empire. We've done INRA. We've done the Thargoids. We've done the Guardians. We've done all the Machiavellian weird and wonderful scheming that's going on behind the scenes with some of the significant characters from the lore, and we've ended up here in the Prism system with the final story of Salomé in the Formidine Rift. We are planning an extended expedition out there, so if you'd like to join us to go and visit the Zoara, which is the one of the points of interest for the Formidine Rift story, and you hear those audio logs of what happened there, so if you're very welcome to join us. But this does indeed mark the end of the Elite Dangerous lore tour in its original form. So I hope you found it really interesting. I hope you found it, it's maybe brought a little bit more of the game out for you, and give you a reason to keep playing and finding out more things about things. What I would suggest that all the POIs that you get in the missions are definitely worth going to visit. So if you do want to kind of do all those sort of things, then it's worth going and reading them. There's quite a lot of little bits of tidbits which I've deliberately avoided going to in the tour, so you can go and experience them yourself. So all the places we visited, go back to YouTube and find out where we've been to. In those systems, there are lots of POIs and historical bits of information. Go and have a read of them. Enjoy the lore. And I hope you've enjoyed these series of streams on topic. Please do join us for the extended tour next week in the Ridquat system. Details are on the website, and I'll tweet them out as per normal. But otherwise, my friends, I leave you now with the lore explained. You've learnt everything there is to learn. So now you must go out into the void and forge your own path and do your own thing. So carry on, commanders. Keep writing on. I will say 07, and I will see you. I'll see you next week for an extended trip out into the black. So Godspeed, be good, take care of yourself, and as Salomé would always ask you, remember, I'll see you soon. Oh, someone's just said, wait for the jump. Is that the ship? I haven't been catching up with the chat. Is the ship, is Salomé about to jump? Is this, oh sorry, Salomé's ghost, should I say, about to jump? Because if it is, I wouldn't mind seeing that, because I haven't seen that on screen. So let's watch that, definitely. Should be jumping in a few minutes. Ah, brilliant. Okay, well, I'll hang on a bit then. I'll hang on a bit. Sorry, yes. So yeah, so next week in that case we are going to rendezvous in the Ridquat system. So the Zoara, the megaship that I mentioned, is way deep out in the Formidine Rift. Now, back in the day, that was quite hard to get to deliberately. Yeah, we wanted to make it a bit of a quest for players. Nowadays, with Guardian frameshift boosters and engineering, it's far easier to get out there. It's it's relatively straightforward, but back in the day it was quite a trek to get out there. Quite hard to find your way across. Nobody had been there before, so nobody knew how to get there, and so it was a proper quest into the blackness, following obscure clues and so on and so forth. So yeah, so this is a good way to end up, I think, with this. But this megaship is the ghost of Salomé, and it's going to disappear soon in a in that wonderful cloud of lightningy, smoky stuff. So I'm quite looking forward to watching that as it goes. So I'll stick with my external camera here. We'll capture that on the stream. I think that's going to be quite good. So yeah, so when players went out to the Formidine Rift in the first place, it was only a you only had a pretty much maxed out 30 to 35 year light year jump range, which made some parts of it very difficult to get across because the stars are simply too far apart. So the players had to map routes and figure ways around it. So it's very it was quite an expedition, quite hard, and players did a lot of searching. I didn't stumble across the Anaconda, unfortunately, or fortunately maybe, because the story would have been explained a little bit earlier. But it, I think we had an in-game mystery there that lasted a good 2 to 3 years, which is pretty good for an in-game mystery, I think. Players worked it out. We had some fun. We did some politics. We had some shenanigans in game. We had CGs, and we had a whole bunch of story stuff. Here it goes, I think. Was that just a warning klaxon there? I don't know where. There's a bit of smoke there. Or is that just a countdown? Has anybody got the? There's the big horn. What is the big horn? Is that the 3 minutes? That's the 3 minute countdown. Okay. I have docked one of these in game, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen one actually jump in game. I've seen it on YouTube. So all the pads locked down. So that's quite good. So 3 minutes to go, and the ghost of Salomé running away from the Prism system. But she'll always be here, okay? She'll always be haunting the Prism system. So whenever you come back to the Prism system in game, this is Salomé's home. She fought a lot to secure the Prism system, and she knew she wasn't the right leader. That's something she did do right. She was wise enough to know that it wasn't in her gift to be a good administrator of Prism, which is why she gave it over to Ambassador Cuthrick. And Prism has thrived since. He's done a good job, and it will always be always be a place in Elite Dangerous to come back and have a think about what happened. So Salomé may be gone, and her ghost is about to depart, as we shall see. But the Prism system and her legacy will always be here. There are some historical POIs in this system as well, which tell the story of Salomé. And if you want to look up her last last communication, which again is beautifully voice acted, go to the Panacea Medical Center. You can look that up on the internet and find it, and you can travel out there. It's not too far away, and listen to Salomé's last message to all the Elite Dangerous players. So we're just awaiting the megaship departure. This is a nice way to sign off the Lore Tour. So thank you, whoever is in charge of the Ghost of Salomé fleet carrier. A perfect way to end the tour, I think, as we wait for the ship to majestically jump away. There he goes. I hear the sounds of hyperdrives being charged. Look. And there she goes. Off to who knows where. Boom. And that, my friends, is the end of the Lore Tour. Thank you very much for your company. Farewell. Right on, Commanders. 07. And I'll see you soon.